Joining me now is Chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio. Man, there's a lot to talk about here, Jim. Great to see you. It's a very exciting time. I just want to play a little soundbite from Elon Musk talking about what we're in the midst of right now. Let me play that and get your reaction. Roll it.
I think this is going to be the most transformative presidency, perhaps since the founding of the country. And President Trump is picking the cabinet to do it. You can see that the choices are people who are actually going to make change. It's not going to be business as usual. We're going to shake things up. It's going to be a revolution.
Congressman, a revolution? Is that hyperbole, or do you think it's fair said?
Well, I think the American people voted for a change in attitude from their government. They want a government that actually serves we the people instead of being weaponized against them. So one thing I know about Matt Gaetz is if he's running the DOJ, he's not going to be investigating moms and dads showing up at school board meetings. He's not going to be having an FBI put out a memorandum like they did in the Richmond field office, which said if you're a pro-life Catholic, somehow you're an extremist. And he might actually get answers to questions that I think the whole country would like to know. Like who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th? Who leaked the Dobbs opinion that resulted in assassination attempts and threats to our Supreme Court justices? And maybe he'd also get an answer to who put cocaine at the White House, for example. So that's what we want. This is a whole new coalition that's come together, embracing freedom and embracing a government that's going to serve the taxpayers, serve we the people, not be targeted for political reasons against the very people that they're supposed to be serving.
And one of the best ways they can serve the American people is by shrinking, is by not being so big and so intrusive into our daily lives. I also want to show some. It's not just the size, of course. You mentioned the bias, and just to give you an idea of what's inside the Beltway, because you know not everybody that works in the federal government lives inside of D.C. But I just want to show you how they voted inside the Beltway. 92.5% of the people in Washington, 92.5% voted for Kamala Harris. Only 6.7% voted for Trump. That tells you something, right?
No, it sure does. They like big government. They're part of government. They like this crazy left mentality that we see in today's Democrat Party, unfortunately. So, yeah, we want a government that is actually protecting freedom. That's why I love the picks. Robert F. K. Jr. is about expanding freedom. Tulsi Gabbard is about protecting the First Amendment, expanding freedom. David, did you ever think you'd see Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard on the same team?
No.
They're on the same team because
up until a year ago, never in a million years.
Right. They value the First Amendment. Here's how bad it was. I talked to RFK Jr. A couple months ago when he endorsed President Trump, and we first laughed because I reminded him that when I invited him in as a witness over a year ago, I took some heat for that. I had him come and testify. We had Tulsi Gabbard. This is when they were Democrats come and testify in front of our committee. We took a little heat for it, but we look like we're geniuses now that this new coalition has come together. And in that hearing, the Democrats made a motion to go to executive session so that kick everyone out, so no one could hear what RFK Jr. was going to testify to in a hearing about censorship. Think about that.
No, it's incredible. I remember that very well. So this is a whole new team. It is a whole new world right now. The curtain has been pulled back. Americans didn't like what they saw. They voted for a revolutionary change, which is what they're going to get. Let's talk, though, about the belly of the beast. And you mentioned it already. The Department of Justice, the FBI, which is their enforcement mechanism. You went through some of the things, the lawfare against Trump, the raids. Basically, though, it's a violation of the Constitution, particularly, and it's still happening. I mean, we just had this. I don't know the details of the raid on Polymarket. You know that betting firm, which just was these apparently armed FBI agents went in there, got the guy. He was perp walked out of there. Who knows? There may be something there, but you know, the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure has been violated so many times in the past 4 years, starting, I think, with the raid on Mar-a-Lago and going on. And the people in charge of that, the head of the FBI office, is a virulent anti-Trump guy. They had to scrub his social media history when he took over the Miami office. His name is Jeff Vetri. Shouldn't there be a change in the director of the Miami office now that the president is his arch enemy?
Well, we can't have this politics and politics driving the actions of law enforcement or, frankly, any agency. We got the example of FEMA. We're going to skip the houses with Trump signs in their yard. We're not going to give them the service that they need as American citizens, as taxpayers. So when you politicize things, whether it's the FBI, whether it's FEMA, whether it's the IRS targeting Tea Party groups as they did a decade ago, that is wrong, and it's got to stop. And that's what this focuses on. And you're right, David. Smaller is better because smaller government means more freedom. That's why I love what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be working on, figuring out a way to shrink down government, give us that report. We can put it into legislation and do what needs to be done for the American people.
But they're not all. I mean, the FBI, let's face it, they are the tip, literally the tip of the spear of the power of the federal government. And if they are run by, I mean, a lot of people thought we got rid of the bad apples with Peter Strzok and everything. But this guy who's heading the Miami office, he sounds just as bad as Peter Strzok. I mean, he was involved in the same kind of horrible stuff about Trump on social media that Peter Strzok was involved with. And he was, one of the things, it worried a lot of people when he was made head of the investigation into the potential assassination at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, right. So when we get a new director, I think he should probably change who's running that investigation in Miami. Maybe even tell Mr. Belcher, you need to go somewhere else, not be running the field office in this important field office in Miami. But the ATF, who killed Mr. Malinowski, put the tape on his door, early morning raid on his home, and it was a search warrant. It wasn't an arrest warrant. Are you kidding me? Mark Houck, whose family was traumatized because they couldn't. His lawyer said he'll meet you, but no, they got to go in a pre-dawn raid like they did in Little Rock to Mr. Malinowski. I mean, this is just wrong, and the country knows it, and it's why I think it was one of the reasons why President won with such an overwhelming margin.
Yeah, I would think that somebody like Kash Patel is the sort of person that President-elect Trump is looking to head up the FBI. How would he, if it's Kash Patel or somebody else like him, a tough guy with experience who knows how DOJ works and knows how these enforcement agencies work, how would they go about convincing Mr. Wray to step down?
Well, I think that'll be a call for the president. I think if the president asked for that, that's going to happen. I mean, that was part of this mandate in this election. Voting for, as I said, this new attitude where the agencies and the people running these agencies actually are focused on serving the public versus focused on politics. So Kash Patel, as you know, worked for Devin Nunes. That's when I first met Kash, and the good work he did in the Intel Committee as one of the top staffers for Chairman Nunes. Kash has the right attitude. So I have full confidence whoever President Trump is going to nominate for these key positions, let's just hope we can get these folks through the Senate and get them confirmed.
Let's talk about Matt Gaetz. Very controversial pick. He had this, apparently the DOJ, as weaponized and politicized as the DOJ was, they didn't find the stuff to indict the guy. You would think if he had anything indictable in his record, the DOJ would have found it and gone after him, but they dropped it. The House investigation was ongoing, but there's a lot of hearsay in that. Do you think Senator Thune will let him pass through the Senate confirmation process and accept him?
Well, that's the way our Constitution works. That's a question for the Senate. The advising consent, that comes and confirming, that's the Senate's responsibility. What I know is Matt Gaetz is a member of our committee, and the talented way, and one of the best I've seen in my time in Congress in cross-examining witnesses, just a talented individual. And if he's at the head of DOJ, as I said before, he's not going to be going out and investigating moms and dads who are simply showing up to protect their kids and help their kids get the right kind of education. He's not going to be engaged in some of the crazy things we have seen from the Justice Department over the last 8-10 years. So that to me is important. And again, he has the confidence of President Trump. All right, let's go. All
right, very quickly, because we're running out of time here, but President Trump could bypass the Senate with a recess appointment. We've seen it done before where he could be in an acting role as the Attorney General for up to 2 years. That's a long, it wouldn't be as good as being confirmed by the Senate. Here's what the Wall Street Journal editorial board said about doing something like that. Quote, The prospect is that Mr. Trump might try to bully the Senate to go into a recess so he can unilaterally make Mr. Gaetz the Attorney General, maybe until the end of 2026. The idea is anti-constitutional, and it would eliminate one of the basic checks on power that the founders built into the American system of government. What do you think of that? Do you agree or disagree with that?
Again, that's a question for the Senate and their relationship with the White House. We would prefer the Constitution. We're the ones protecting the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Constitution, separate and equal branches of government. We want the Constitution to function. Let's go through the confirmation process and get the folks that President Trump has put up confirmed. I think it's critical that these key people who value freedom and who stepped forward and became part of our coalition, like Tulsi Gabbard, like RFK Jr., who value the First Amendment. Remember, the third day of the Biden administration, they sent an email. They tried to censor a tweet from RFK Jr., their political competition, on the third day, January 23rd, 2021. They sent out an email. Take down this tweet ASAP, and everything in RFK Jr.'s email, or excuse me, everything in his tweet was accurate, but they didn't like the connotation. They didn't like the message it conveyed. That is wrong, and everyone understands.
When you think about the first,
I want freedom.
The Second, the Fourth Amendment that are either directly violated or planned to be, and they have the nerve to talk about defending the Constitution. I mean, I don't think the American people buy it. I think the election proved the American people don't buy it, and we wish you the very best. Chairman Jim Jordan, my friend, thank you very much.